We'll call to order the Board of Zoning Appeals. Would you stand for the pledge? Joe, would you lead us? Please remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you. Call the roll, please.
Keith Bratcher.
Here.
Joe Crowell.
Here.
Jerry Sartain. Joe Machado.
Here.
Michael Rather. Jared Barrett.
Here.
Thane Cantrell.
Present.
All voting members are present, sir. We do have a quorum.
Okay, all regular members are present. We'll be voting tonight. We have the minutes that were mailed out to us. Are there any changes or corrections to the minutes of last month?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that they be approved as presented.
Have a motion to be approved?
I'll second it.
Have a second? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, light sign. They are approved. All right. We have a couple of items that were left over from last month that we'll be dealing with again. And let me welcome each of you here and remind you that when we have a public hearing part, we ask that you keep your comments specific to the request that is before us and try to keep it within 3 minutes. We will keep a time on that. But we will listen to what you have to say, and we do appreciate your comments on any of the items that come before us. We do ask that you come to the podium to my right and give us your name and then share whatever information that you might have about the item that will be coming before us. The first item we have is under old business, and this is a Belichick Perkins request. And this is, we voted last month to rehear this. It was denied earlier. So what do you have on that?
Application BZA 2012-40, filed by Derek Wieselick and Cami Perkins, involves the property located at 4743 Veterans Parkway. It's a 4.9-acre site that's zoned residential 15. Mr. Wieselick is seeking conditional use of permit approval to allow the establishment of a major home-based business of a construction, office, and storage with variance relief to allow an additional 2,160 square feet of detached accessory structure area for a property located in R15. Obviously, this has come before the board before in July, and it was denied based on a concern for regarding outside storage and dust. It was asked by the applicant to rehear this case, and he submitted a letter that was submitted to you last month and also included in your packets this month. Staff originally recommended approval, and staff finds that the application continues to meet the conditions for conditional use permit approval and recommends approval subject to conditions. One of the concerns that were brought up was the generation of dust based on the activities that would be associated with the business that he is seeking. And just to remind you that whenever we do approve major home-based businesses or minor home-based businesses, all of those approvals are subject to conditions. Those conditions also include provisions relating to noise, dust, traffic. They will continually have to meet those conditions in order to remain a business at that particular site. And these are photos of the surrounding area. I have not received any calls this month regarding the requests. I had an informational call the month that he appeared before the board in July. And there is a home being constructed across the street, Veterans Parkway. There's existing homes on each side of the applicant. And this is the layout for which the applicant is proposing to construct the garage. And this is the aerial of the site. We posted another sign on the property this month, and that concludes our presentation.
Okay. Do we have anyone here representing this request? If you'll come around, please.
My name is Derek Selledge, property owner of the Veterans Parkway property. First, I want to thank you for allowing me to come back and be reheard. I don't have much to add other than to the original letter and packet that I gave you the second time, but I would like to address any concerns that you guys might have for me.
The big question was the parking of your items out there, your work.
Yes, one of the concerns was of course, the equipment, which was the skid steer and the mini excavator. The lean-to that's being proposed to the left of the property, there was we're going to build a wall, a 8-foot tall fence to the front of that comes off 12 foot and goes all the way back to the back of the building. And that will be concealed. All the equipment will be concealed in between the fence and the building underneath the lean-to. The driveway was the other concern. I hope that you guys can understand that.
All of your equipment that you try to have will be under storage, and you'll have some kind of buffer for that now. Is that correct?
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, it's 750 feet to the back
Okay,
of the
now on
building.
your in and out and your dust, what's your proposal on that?
I don't have much other than, I mean, in the future, you know, that's what I'm getting to. I hope you guys understand that I don't have, you know, my house is 30 feet away from the driveway. There's going to be minimal amounts of traffic, which is myself and my father-in-law and 3 of our employees that go in there, and they're all brothers, so they ride with us anyways. So there's going to be minimal traffic going up and down the driveway, but at some point in time, ultimately, I would like to get it concreted to match the rest of the driveway to the existing house.
Okay, the one thing to resolve this dust possible problem, you know, this has been an unusual summer, and if you don't have paved driveways in a paved area, there are other things that you can do to minimize any dust. You'd be willing to do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Joe?
How many vehicles a day will go in and out?
Well, since I live at the property, there's going to be one. There's going to be about 4 to 6 trips up and down the driveway.
4 or 6 vehicles go in and out per day.
No, there's the 2 trucks that we own and then 1 employee car.
So just be 3 trips in and out?
Yeah.
Okay, what kind of equipment will be sitting there?
It's just a mini excavator and then a skid steer and a close.
What do you mean by mini excavator?
Just it's like a 5-foot by 5-foot box, and it's got the boom on there. It's quite small. It's to dig around the house.
Okay, and what else? And what else?
That's it. I mean, I'm not in the business of buying heavy equipment or backhoes or big dump trucks, so. Well, we have an enclosed dump trailer right now, and that's typically it. If it's not going to be stored in the building, it'll be stored inside the dump trailer.
I just got a couple of questions. So in the mornings, you and your employees, y'all leave, go to the job, and then you come back in the evening, correct? I mean, that's all you're going to be doing. I mean, folks ain't going to be coming in and out there all day.
Yes, sir. No customers visit the house. I mean, it's,
Okay, and the lean-to that you're talking about, you're constructing, at nighttime when you come home with your equipment, you're going to park it in that, up under that lean-to, so it'll be enclosed?
if that's what's preventing me from building a building, yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, so thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the concern I had last time you were before us was all of your equipment was going to be outside storage, and you have neighbors in lots next to you.
Sure.
So to make sure I'm understanding, you're willing to build a privacy fence, for another word for it, to prevent that?
Yeah, there's going to be a fake wall to the front of the building that's going to be blocking. That'll be basically the roof structure and then the wall. And then 12 feet off of that will be the fence. The privacy fence will go 12 feet off of that and then shoot back to the back. So yes, it'll be enclosed in the fence.
Thank you.
Thank you. You may be seated. We'll open this for a public hearing for anyone who'd like to speak on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Tiffany Phillips. I'm commissioner for this district, District 8. I live out in 114 East McGuire Street in Bell Buckle. And I apologize, first of all, for not being able to be here in July. My grandfather passed away that day, so I wasn't able to come to the meeting. But I would also like to note that I have not received any phone calls. I did not receive any in July, nor since then have I received any phone calls. And I do support this proposal and hope that you would support it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else? We'll close the public hearing to have a motion on it.
I'm just going to ask Danielle, she has Gooch as the commissioner for that district. Is that not correct?
I believe, and the information that I was pulling from was premature, and it's not in effect, and it's been corrected. However, I used the same template for the original report, so I do apologize for that.
Commissioner Phillips is the commissioner out there. I'll entertain a motion on this.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to be approved.
Okay, we have a motion to be approved. Do we have a
Chairman,
second?
I second it.
Call the roll, please.
Keith Bratcher,
Yes.
Joe Crowell,
Yes.
Joe Machoto,
Yes.
Jerry Sartain,
Yes.
Zane Cantrell.
Yes.
Motion carries, sir.
The next item is the Richard Reeves proposal. What do you have on that now? That was here with us last month.
Application 21244 involves the property located at in the vicinity of 950 Jefferson Pike. It's a 205-acre parcel that's zoned PRD. The property owner and applicant, Richard Reeves, is requesting a temporary conditional use permit allowing a burrow pit with relief from the area requirements for burrow pits in the PRD zone. And the applicant appeared before you last month, and we heard testimony from the applicant and surrounding neighbors. We had a public hearing. And in response to some of the concerns that were brought up, the applicant has since revised their application in areas that are being proposed for excavation. And the staff report briefly addresses all of that as well as the conditions. And we are recommending approval subject to conditions, and those conditions would be the conditions that were passed out on the sheet to tonight that incorporates offerings by the applicant. Staff has refined some of the language, eliminated some of the duplicate conditions, and incorporated conditions by the engineering staff. And so we have thought about the conditions for this particular application, and we have posted 3 signs on the property, and they were still posted on the property when we checked this month, and we have recent notices to everyone again, so everyone should be notified by now. And we've not received but maybe 2 or 3 informational calls this month, in contrast to the many calls we received the month prior. But these are photos of the surrounding area. The applicant has a presentation prepared for you. They'll go over the changes that have been made to the request since the previous hearing. And if anyone in the audience would like some of the recommended conditions that we are recommending along with engineering, we have extra copies to pass out.
Have all parties agreed to these conditions?
The applicant has been supplied with the conditions prior to tonight's meeting, and engineering department.
Any questions of Danielle before we go forward on this?
Yes, sir. I don't think this is adequate time.
Wait just a minute. We'll get with you just in a second.
Okay.
That's okay.
Okay.
That's all right.
Just to let you know that this is the revised proposal. It has eliminated the 2.7-acre parcel area that they were going to excavate along the Jefferson Pike frontage, and then they reduced another area. The applicant has offered to reduce the areas of excavation to only 5 acres or less at any given time. Our conditions that we have worked with engineering as well as the applicant, that once each 5-acre section has been excavated, they are required to restore that and it be inspected by engineering before they can move on to the next 5-acre section. They will be required to submit a reclamation bond for the restoration of the property, as well as go through engineering prior to even commencement of the work to have their reclamation plan approved. The conditions also address one of the positives for this application is that it eliminates truck traffic because the dirt would be acquired from another site which might not be adjacent to the site that it's needed. And so it is reducing truck traffic, or will result in the reduction of potential truck traffic along Jefferson Pike. But there is a provision in the conditions that it is ingress and egress to the site through Riverwalk or State Road 266 is prohibited. Should there be any change, they are to notify engineering department immediately, and then they may be required to provide a bond. They will be required to have a pre-construction meeting with the engineering department. At that time, they would have to submit all permits that are required by the state and any other agencies that regulate the borough pit operations. The applicant has offered that they will not be conducting any blasting on the site, and so we've incorporated that into the conditions. And that concludes our presentation.
We'll ask those who are representing this request to come forward, give us your name and any additional information. There may be some questions.
Good evening, members of the...
Excuse me, are we officially opening the public hearing, sir?
We will have a public hearing after this. Go ahead.
Good evening, members of the Board of Zoning Appeals and staff. I'm Brick Murphy of the law firm of Murphy & Murphy. Our firm is located at 805 South Church Street here in Murfreesboro at Suite 21, and I represent the applicants, Mr. Richard Reeves and Mrs. Joan Reeves, his wife. If you will move to the next slide, thank you. Once again, the applicants are Mr. Richard Reeves and his wife, Joan Reeves. The property in question is 205.7 acres on East Jefferson Pike, which is directly adjacent to the BFI landfill. The BFI landfill requires clay for its operations, and that's an integral part of the landfill operations are having clay to seal up basically the various levels once they put debris and they seal the debris. So it's going to be something that's provided from somewhere. The Reeves proposed to supply clay to the BFI site from their property, which is adjacent to the BFI landfill. And once again, this is not an expansion of the landfill operations, and this is not an expansion of BFI's operations. All excavation work done on the Reeves property will be conducted by contractors that are hired by them, that is the Reeves, paid by the Reeves and controlled by the Reeves. They won't be controlled by BFI. Mr. Richard Reeves will be in charge of those contractors, and they'll be reporting directly to the applicant and not to BFI. And one thing to point out, Mr. Reeves is a longtime resident of Rutherford County, is concerned about how this is perceived in the community, and he would like this to be an example of how to conduct borough pit operations in the county in the future. He'd like this to be kind of the archetype and for this to be used as an example for other projects in the county. The following commitments are a matter of public record. We've made an application. We've since that time, the applicant has submitted 2 letters, which I've submitted on their behalf, with some amendments, and I'm going to go over these amendments in a second. But these amendments were negotiated with the neighbors. There were also things that staff had requested as well. So these are things that were negotiated between our initial application and the presentation before you tonight. One thing to point out, these commitments are binding on the applicant. They're a matter of public record. We've submitted them in writing, so in the future, y'all will be able to confirm that Mr. Reeves has met his obligations, and anyone in the public could pull the record and look at it as well. Next slide, please. The BFI site, once again, requires clay for its operations. It's just a necessary part of the BFI site that's there, and if the clay is not provided from this site, it's going to be trucked in from other locations on public roads. Once again, this does not expand the life or scope of the landfill in any way. Clay, once again, will inevitably be supplied from some location. It's going to come from somewhere. If not from the Reeves property, it's going to come from somewhere, maybe outside the county, maybe somewhere in the county, but it is going to be supplied. And this merely allows clay to be supplied from an adjoining track rather than have it trucked in. All clay removed from the Reeves property would be used on the adjoining BFI track. We're not going to be removing the clay from this track and trucking it across the county or to another construction site. It's all going to be used on the adjacent track. Next slide, please. The Reeves proposal avoids, once again, dump truck traffic on public roads transporting this clay, and therefore would reduce dump truck traffic. The applicants estimate that their proposal would reduce trips on public roads by about 50 dump truck trips per day, which I believe is sizable, over 600 days. So that's 50 dump truck trips a day for, 600 days. Next slide, please. The applicants have agreed, these are some of the concessions we've made over the past month. They've agreed, initially their application was to have 10-acre sections excavated. We've agreed to reduce 10 acres to 5 acres approximately, so that's a 50% reduction. And so what we would have is a 5-acre section under excavation at any one time. The applicants have agreed to remove a area that they were going to excavate, which is on Jefferson Pike, which adjoined what's known as the Matthews property. They've agreed to totally remove that from the application. And they've also agreed to reduce another area on Jefferson Pike, which is visible to the public potentially, from 4.1 acres to 3.4 acres. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to try to use this laser pointer. If I blind somebody, I'm sorry. But the last time I was here, it was kind of hard for me to explain about it, so bear with me here. Okay, let's see here. This is Jefferson Pike running right here. We have the landfill property right here, the landfill property right here. And the applicant's property runs kind of like this. It's kind of like a U. And we've got River Rock subdivision right here. Now, one of the areas that we've agreed to remove is this area right here. There was a hash mark there where excavation was going to be done at one point, but we've agreed to remove that. Mr. Reeves has, and that reduces the area by 2.7 acres. And we feel like that was a site that was going to be visible to the public and probably could have been an eyesore for a time period. So this area has been removed. And this area right here has been decreased. That's the area we agreed to decrease the size of, and have agreed to a 150-foot setback here from Jefferson Pike. And as you can see, for all existing single-family residential neighborhoods, for example, right here, we have a 150-foot setback, And just one thing to point out again, we're talking about 5-acre sections, so little pieces at a time. We're not talking about excavating this whole site at once. What we would be doing is excavating a small piece, putting the topsoil back down, and then reseeding it, and then moving on to the next piece. We wouldn't be excavating large pieces at any time. Next slide, please. The above changes reduce the total acreage that could be excavated from 71.4 acres to 65.2 acres. And I think, and so that's 65.2 acres out of a total of 205.7 acres of the total property owned by the Reeves. The percentage of land that would be excavated, and this is total, this isn't at any one time, but this is ever on the property, would be would be reduced from 34.7% to 31.69%. So you're looking at 30% essentially that would be excavated of the whole, which is a fairly large acre tract, 200 plus acres. Next slide, please. The applicants never intended to do any blasting on the property. This is going to be excavation with a backhoe or something along those lines, but there was some concern expressed by the neighbors, and we felt like it was important to submit in writing our commitment that there would never be any blasting on the property. So they've agreed to do that. It's in the application and in this presentation, so there won't be any blasting. Dump trucks and service trucks will not be permitted to enter or exit the property through any existing residential neighborhoods. That's not the intent whatsoever. Also, the applicants and their contractors would not move their trucks through the Riverwalk subdivision. That's a subdivision that's kind of in the middle of the property, and we wanted to make it very clear that we would not be using their subdivision streets. Next slide, please. The applicants have also agreed to remove their requests for administrative extensions. So at the end of the permitting period, we would have to come back before the Board of Zoning Appeals, and then that way y'all can police their commitments and the obligations that they have under your ordinances, and staff and the BZA would have an opportunity to say that we are not complying with the commitments we've made, and it, I guess, allows y'all to keep us honest, so to speak. So, next slide, please. I think another thing to point out, and I've hit on this a couple times, but I would like to reiterate it, a major selling point of this application is not having to have dump trucks on our public roads. The high points of why we think this is helpful is basically it's going to preserve our existing county roads. We're not going to have heavy trucks on them, tearing them up. Those 50 dump truck loads a day would be coming on these streets and ripping up y'all's streets. It reduces the possibility of traffic accidents with these dump trucks as they come and go, because they'll be moving from the Reeves property across the property line to the BFI site and back. We're not going to have them moving out onto Jefferson Pike and back, or having this clay brought in from somewhere else in the county, which, dump trucks pose a hazard health-wise and safety-wise. And it's going to reduce congestion on roads in the county that are already well used. Next slide, please. As stated, it's going to avoid tens of thousands of dump truck trips. Once again, we will not be using any existing residential neighborhoods to bring these trucks in and out. And once again, we're looking at about 60,000 dump truck trips that will not be made on public roads, which will be made if this application is not approved. Once again, BFI is going to get their clay from somewhere. If not from the Reeves property, it will come from some location. Next slide, please. The applicants are going to utilize extensive efforts to prevent dust and erosion. For example, watering, those kinds of things. And those efforts will be placed throughout the project during the entire scope of the project. And every effort will be made to mitigate dust and debris on public roads. We wouldn't have dump truck trips on public roads in terms of the movement of clay, but we're also going to police, we're also going to be watching the dump trucks as they come on and off the property at the beginning and the end of the day. Mr. Reeves is going to be in control of these dump trucks, and he's going to be able to say, look, guys, you're not doing things the right way. Next slide, please. The original proposal, once again, was to have 10-acre sections under excavation at any time. Mr. Reeves has agreed to reduce those 10-acre sections to 5-acre sections, which is obviously a 50% reduction. And the idea here is what we would do, or Mr. Reeves would do, is remove the topsoil, store the topsoil on site, remove the clay from that 5-acre section, put the topsoil back and reseed it, and then move on to the next 5-acre section. And the idea here is placing the topsoil back and reseeding it will allow the grass to regrow and will allow the property to be restored to its original field-like conditions. And you're not going to have large areas under excavation at any time. We're going to phase it, so 5 acres at a time. And as one 5-acre section is completed, it'll be reseeded, the topsoil put back, it'll start to grow back, and we'll move on to the next one. Next slide, please. The existing trees, there are some existing trees on the property. They're going to be preserved. We're not going to be cutting down trees that serve as buffer. We all know trees are aesthetically pleasing, but they also serve as good buffering for neighbors. Those are not going to be removed. It'll also serve as cover for wildlife, those kinds of things. And the goal here is 6 months after the excavation on the site is complete, the property will be returned to its original condition. It'll be completely, all the topsoil put back and completely reseeded. And once again, one thing to mention one more time is we do have a 150-foot setback from residential property owners. There's a 50-foot setback from all other property lines, and excavation would only occur during daylight hours. We're not going to have trucks out there in the middle of the night. Next slide, please. Erosion control is a major issue, obviously. The applicants are going to be required to submit and would submit a drainage and erosion control plan to the county engineer prior to commencing any excavation on the property. The applicants will also submit a reclamation plan to the county engineer for prior approval before any excavation occurs. This proposal, once again, does not call for the construction of a lake. There has been some discussions about that. If a lake was constructed, we'd have to come back and get approval to impound water, and we would have additional discussions with the neighbors. And the requirements and staff comments that have been handed out, I've discussed with Mr. Reeves. He's comfortable with those. We would agree to adhere to those if they were a condition of the application. And once again, I'm Rick Murphy. I'm here to answer any questions. Mr. Reeves, the applicant, is also here should the board have any questions for us.
Gary?
You talked about the reclamation being complete at 6 months after the project is done.
Yes, sir.
Is there an estimate of how long it'll take for this project completed?
I believe it will take a couple years total. I mean, if we were excavating 70 acres at once, it would move a lot quicker. But the fact that we're phasing it, it's going to take some time. And it also depends kind of on the needs of the landfill. But one of the strong points, I think, is we're just cutting off little sections at a time, 5-acre sections. And so they'll be excavated on an as-needed basis. But what we're looking at is a couple years total. But what Mr. Reeves would like to do is have this be kind of the archetype, the example that y'all have for borough pits in the county, and he wants to do this right. And y'all will have an opportunity at the end of at each period, this comes up for renewal, to say we're not doing things the way y'all want us to be.
You said that we talked about the mini dump truck loads would be going to the landfill and not on the road. Does that mean 100% of the clay that's coming off this property is going to be going to the landfill? It's not going to be sold to other places?
The landfill 100%. Our commitments are we're supplying clay to the landfill and no other sites.
Joe?
Mr. Murphy, I got a question.
Yes,
Looks
sir.
like you got 8 dirt pits, correct?
That looks to be correct.
How would you drain you're going to go down 5 to 7 feet deep. You're going to remove the topsoil, then remove clay 5 to 7 feet. You're probably going to the rock bed, right?
It depends, but probably that would be the idea, is to
Probably going to the
excavate
rock
the
bed.
clay.
How would you tie all these together and drain all these 8 pits 5 to 7 feet deep?
I'm not the engineer, so I'm going to have to defer to them. There is, Weiser and Company is working.
Is there somebody here tonight who could answer that question for me?
I don't believe there is. We didn't want to kind of get the cart before the horse on that one. In terms of getting lots of engineering done, an engineering plan would have to be submitted and a drainage plan to the county, and I believe that TDEC is also going to be involved in policing that, if I'm correct. And I've already had discussions with TDEC kind of about what their expectations are. So they're going to be holding our feet to the fire big time.
Okay, the way I see this, you're going to have these 5-acre tracts at a time could possibly hold water 5 to 7 foot deep. You're going to do 5 acres at a time. So are you going to have a fence around this where the kids from this subdivision would not fall in and drown in these pits you're going to have? Because I assume they will hold water.
My understanding
For
is
a
the county
period of time anyway.
My understanding is the county is going to require us to do that.
Is that right, Mr. Corbin?
There's a requirement to put a fence around the excavated area. In other words, it'd be 5 acres at a time. This is usually basically a farm fence, chicken wire, woven wire. 4 feet's not going to keep kids out of the pond. In fact, been some facilities I've seen where they had 10-foot fences, and if the kids want to get into the pond, they're going to climb the fence. But we're providing, we're requiring them to provide this fence to at least maybe they'll stop and think about it.
How would you tie these 8 pits together? I'm looking at this map. You'd have to have a huge ditch someplace that tied all these pits together to drain off into a creek or something.
I would agree with that. However, as he said, I think Weiser, we haven't seen anything for Weiser. There are several ways they could do that depending on what the costs are, and I don't know the answer to that at this point.
Well, how would I vote tonight if I don't know the answer to that?
All I can tell you is that TDEC is going to require them to do an extensive plan to restore this or reclaim it, and then we will evaluate it after TDEC's approval, and that's the standard procedure that we've done with other excavation products, not going through TDEC. They're doing it because of the size of the project, but in the past we've looked at their reclamation plan after approval's been given.
But your office would make sure this drained after they were through with it?
That's correct.
It would have to be drained.
Well, they said they're going to store it to the current system as it is, and right now you don't have a series of small ponds out there, so there would be some way to drain all that.
Okay, thank you.
Keith?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I got a few questions. And I don't know where Dale can answer it. I don't know if you have anybody here. I guess one question I have is, and he alluded to it a little bit, is how deep are you going to dig? I mean, he says 5 to 7 feet. I mean, any borrow pits that I've went out and witnessed been a whole lot deeper than 5 to 7 feet. If you're gonna use this property and be able to get the most out of the dirt, I mean, 5 to 7 feet. I mean, I think you'd be wasting your time.
And I hate to kind of answer your question this way, and it's one of those things that we're just going to have to do an analysis of the property, figure out how much clay there is in that area, and then engineer around it. There are solutions, no matter how deep it is, to to those problems, and it's something that the county is going to police. I know they are, and TDEC has already called me and warned me that they'll be watching this.
Right.
So, and we would submit an excavation plan with those details. It's just at this point, Mr. Reeves doesn't want to go to the cost of what's going to be an extensive plan, engineering-wise, without just the basics that he knows he can move forward. So I hate to kind of answer the question that way, but it's one of those things that we honestly need to get past this hurdle before we can engineer it, and the county will be policing it, and once again, it comes back before y'all again at the end of the periods, and if y'all are not satisfied with it, then you can tell us, we're not permitting it anymore.
Well, I guess my concern is concerns about how deep you would dig, and then with that being said, I know you're saying you're going to put the topsoil back in there, but realistically, let's say if there was a 2 foot of topsoil, if you dug 10, 12, 14 foot deep, I don't care if you're doing it at a 5 acre tract at a time, and you put 2 foot of topsoil in there, over this period of time, this is going to change the elevation of this property dramatically. That's one concern I have. The other is, with that being said, after that, if you did that, this thing was approved, and you changed the elevation of this property like that, what is the owner's, what does he plan on doing with this property after that? I mean, I don't know much you could do if it's been, after it's been raped of all the dirt and the clay, and the reason I say bring these concerns up is because this was originally slated to be, it's still RS-15. It was to be approved for homes, and the biggest concern that I have, if after all this project is done, is this subdivision and what these people are going to have around them and dealt with years on after. So a lot of the questions that I have, and I think maybe some other board members may have, due to how it's going to be dug and what it's going to be done, we don't have those, but we're asked to approve or not approve this site tonight. And I have a problem with that because I don't have the answers, or nobody here can answer the questions that I've got. And so,
I mean, we would be required to submit a reclamation plan, and that's something that TDEC is going to require us to do. I've been involved in other sites in other counties, and they're going to hold our feet to the fire. And I understand where you're coming from, but I think that the fact that TDEC and the county will be watching us with an eagle eye, and the fact that it's going to come back before y'all again. And if you're not satisfied with the plan that we've put in place, you can say no more excavation. And we're doing them in small pieces instead of having a 70 acre pit or 70 acres under excavation at any time. And the idea behind that is we would have a reclamation plan. We'd be doing small pieces at a time, and we, to be honest, we're going to be able to work out those details. They're engineering details that can be worked out, and I realize that doesn't give you exactly the answer you need, but TDEC and staff is going to keep our feet to the fire. They are, and you've got the opportunity to look at it again.
And the reason I say that is, and I know we're talking about this application, but I want to result back to another application that was approved years ago when I was on this board. I was an alternate at that time. I was not in favor of it, but it's the Johns property that's on the other end of Jefferson Pike. And if you're familiar with it, it's near a subdivision, and it's a terrible eyesore. And those people had to put up that thing every day. So I want to make sure that the same thing doesn't happen on this. And I'm not saying it was. I'm not comparing Mr. Reeves to anybody else. I know he's a fine gentleman, and I think he'll do what he says he'll do. I just want to make sure that if we did approve this thing, that we're not going to get what we've gotten before, and that be an eyesore to us, and still is.
Reclamation plan and a drainage plan will have to be approved by the county before they can move forward on this. And it may, and I would hope that it would be one that we would all be approval of. And this would go, these items would go to the county engineer.
That's correct. And in this case, what we do, we wait until TDEC gives their approval, and any other outside permits they need. We're required to hold a pre-con based on our stormwater ordinance, and all that stuff will be available at that time.
At any point in time that you're not satisfied, this could be referred back to the BZA.
That's correct.
Joe.
I got a question for Mr. Dale. How about the Johns property? Why is it still an eyesore? Why hasn't it been policed?
Well, the Johns property, when we looked at it, okay, a lot of that work had been done when I got here. We worked with the state. They were required to route the water into a holding area, which they've done. The final topo of the area, it was not required to be submitted at that time as it's going to be on this one. And so all I can tell you is when we monitored or got into monitoring that for stormwater requirements, they were a little different than they are now, and they met the requirements that were in place at that time.
Well, what I'm trying to say, you're saying that this property will not turn out to be like the Johns property. Would you have power to prevent that from happening?
We will have the power to monitor it. I'm like you. I'm kind of curious as to how the final topo is going to look on it because of the unknown depth that the soil's going. But until I can see something from their engineering firm, all I can tell you is we will monitor it and make sure it meets our requirements and our regulations.
But we're being asked tonight to approve this, and we're not sure it's not going to turn out like the Johns property. And I wouldn't want to vote for a property that looked like it next to my home. So we're being asked tonight to vote, and we really don't know how this property is going to turn out. I have trouble with that myself.
Any other questions? Thank you. You may be seated. We'll open this for a public hearing for anyone who'd like to speak on it. If you'll come around to the podium and share any information you might have with us.
Hello, I'm Jack Hazel. I'm a property owner in the Riverwalk subdivision. And I have a couple of questions. One is, the county has zoning laws. We as citizens expect those zoning laws to be upheld and executed. If someone wants to come in and make some money, and all they have to do is come down and get a variation, come in with a lawyer on each arm and sell the project, then what good are the zoning laws? They don't mean anything to us, the average homeowner. Okay. Originally, this property is currently for 600 homes. We don't have a problem with that. More homes in the area is fine. A big pit back there is not fine. Okay. Mr. Reeves says he's not going to blast. How will we know? That dump blasts and shakes our houses regularly. How will we know whether it's the dump blasting or Mr. Reeves blasting? There's no way we're going to be able to know. Trucks on our roads. That's a moot point. No construction outfit is going to come in and haul dirt with trucks that have to be street legal when they can use construction haulers and run the back way from property to property. So I don't believe there ever was a problem of trucks running through the subdivision because it's not to their advantage. The other point is trucks on the road. Mr. Reeves' lawyer sounds like there's never going to be trucks on the road anymore. That's a 20-year dump permit. He's going to be doing dirt for 2 years. Now, that's 18 years of more trucks hauling dirt into that dump. So this is just a minor reprieve. It's not the end-all solution to that. Why is Mr. Reeves so convinced he has to have this variation? He's come in here with lawyers. He came out to the subdivision and he talked to us and blew smoke, promised us lakes, did all kind of things, which his lawyer told us at the last meeting was irrelevant, didn't mean anything, had nothing to do with getting this variation. So he's gone to a lot of trouble and is doing everything through his lawyers. So this variation must mean a lot of dollars. And my understanding, this project is a very high dollar project. So if you have the zoning laws in effect, there's certain laws or certain rules about reclamation of the property. Is that not correct? Okay. If you plant this variation, during that time, all Mr. Reeves has to do is submit to the engineers his reclamation plan, which will be approved or disapproved or whatever behind closed doors. This looks like the last opportunity that we as homeowners can speak up and say something. Once then, it all goes behind closed doors and we no longer have a say or even know what's going on, or there's no requirement that we be told.
All of those meetings are public. You might be there.
Okay, good faith. Man, there's a lot of stuff coming out here that's good faith. We're going to get an engineering firm. Who is this engineering firm? When I was doing engineering work, we always had a consultant engineer that backed up whatever we planned to do to meet state requirements, meet whatever requirements. I have yet to hear a name of an engineering firm. Have you seen the reclamation plans that he's going to submit before he starts construction? The lawyer sat there and told us about a lot of, well, this will be taken care of and that'll be taken care of. And I see a lot of, okay, trust us, we're going to do it right. We're going to see some land that was zoned for homes that is right now being used for some agriculture, totally destroyed to be used for nothing in the future. The gentleman had the right idea. You got a big hole back there and you put a little sprinkle of topsoil back in it. That doesn't make good land to resell for homes or do anything with. It just becomes a big void. Mosquito control. We got a big pit right up there on Jefferson Pike now that the dump started. It's got a bunch of water in it. Who's taking care of the mosquito control? Taxpayers or the property owner? That's a question. Dust. They started digging that hole up on Jefferson Pike. They had water trucks there. The dust would just roll over. When you drove through, you had to roll your windows up in your car for the dust coming off there digging. So I don't see that that is a feasible dust control solution. Okay, we're not going to cut any trees. What constitutes a tree? 6 inches in diameter, 20 feet high. Where is the criteria for what's going to be cut down as trees? There's a lot of trees around there, small and large. So you hear everything about pro-life. How about pro-life for a tree? Does it start when it becomes an acorn and starts sprouting?
You're going to have to finish up your comments. We're running out of time.
Okay. My comment is this: don't grant the variation until all of this is settled and we know what's going on. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. I don't want to defend one way or the other the landfill proposal out there, but just I will take exception to the board's operation here. If we do not look at anything other than the recommendations that comes from our staff and also the requirements, these are never waived in any way. And we do have requirements which are different from the Planning Commission. Everything doesn't go through the Planning Commission. That's why we're here. And a variance only means that this is for this one item at one time. I just want to make that clear on how we operate and why we operate. Yes, ma'am.
Chairman, I also take exception to the insinuation that we do things behind closed doors. That is not true.
And any meeting is always open to the public.
I just to what you said, Mr. Chairman, I also want to make a comment that the Board of Zoning here is a last result. Whatever we do here goes on, and that's it. That's the final say. When stuff goes through planning, after it's approved in planning, it goes before the full commission, and they can still turn it up or down. So, you know, I think right here, as far as the Board of Zoning, this is our last result thing. So that's why I think we need all the information that we can before we, in my opinion, before we make a decision.
Thank you. And it's not that we're defensive. We want to make you understand what our role is and how this works through the county. The final decision can always be with the county offices that we have. We have several of them that always review everything after this is approved by the board, and it is somewhat a complicated process of how it works. But this is only just one little part of the total approval of any project that comes before us. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Karen Burton. I'm also a Riverwalk resident. Karen Burton. Mr. Reeves and I have actually talked back and forth quite a bit, very extensively. Everything that he has told me has gone into writing at this point. So as far as that goes, I'm okay in that area. My concern still does lie with, you know, if you're going to take this much soil out of the bottom of it, but you're only taking this much or this much clay, and then you've got this much soil, when you put that back, you're going to have a depression. And I want to know what that's going to do, because I really don't want to live in a flood zone. And I don't know if that's going to cause a flood zone. I've never ever owned a house before in my life, before now. So I'm okay with his proposal at this point. I know a lot of people in the neighborhood are still not okay. Some people heard the word lake and said, oh, I can go fishing. And they stopped listening to what's really going on. I don't honestly know what's going on, other than the fact that I still think there are things that need to be ironed out, and I think they're right as far as needing concrete plans on the reclamation plans and the engineering issues and what these depressions are going to cause for us, because I don't know what's going to happen, and I don't want to say I'm okay with something if I don't know that. So.
It's really not a question of trust. It's a question of operation. The county engineer will have to approve the drainage plan.
Right.
That doesn't normally come to this board. It's got several other hurdles that it has to go through after it is, if it is approved here.
Right.
If we don't approve it, that ends the whole thing. But it has to go to the county engineer, and he is obligated by law to make sure that the reclamation plan is one that we can live with, and also the drainage plan that we have there. It's not going to become an eyesore, and that's his job to see that that happens. And that's pretty much where we are at this point.
Okay. Now, I do have one
Now,
other.
can I promise you everything's going to be to your... No, I can't. Everybody has their opinion on what it should look like after it happens.
I do have one other question, though, and this, I guess, is more for the board. I've read recently that you are in the process of voting on new ordinances and zoning rules.
Well, all of these things are developed for your protection.
Well, my question particularly comes down to the report that I read on the zoning board's website had something to do with the fact that temporary conditional use permits are actually going to be a thing of the past in residential areas. So when he comes back before the board in 6 months, does he get grandfathered in, or does that actually just throw him out?
This board can stop it at any time,
Okay,
okay?
okay, that's kind of what I wanted
We do
to-
have that much authority.
Okay.
Okay.
So, okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Please come around.
Good afternoon. My name is April Harrell. I actually live in Greenway Estates, which is across the street of Jefferson Pike from the property. And excavating has already began on Jefferson Pike. And obviously there has not been any engineering plans and so forth thus far because they haven't been able to give you guys one. And we have at least 5 foot minimum of pit on the frontage of Jefferson Pike. And it is an eyesore. And as soon as we saw the dump trucks and so forth, I and my husband started getting a little worried because we live in Greenway Estates has been having a huge problem selling their homes. 2 years will go by and the house next door to me was sitting empty. 4 doors down, another house that's worth well over $160,000 couldn't sell for $140,000 because nobody wanted to pay that and live by the dump. So I can understand why Mr. Reeves is trying to find something to do with his land and make some money off from it because he probably can't get a contractor to build homes on his property because nobody is going to want to buy them. This is a huge situation in our neighborhoods. My home has already lost $30,000 in market value, and I'll be lucky if I can sell it at that. And looking at the excavating going on across the street makes me go, I don't want to live here. I already have to filter my water because of the dump. I cannot drink my water, it burns my throat. I have to filter it. Everybody in my neighborhood almost filters their water as well. So I can just imagine how people are feeling, and all these people who live in Riverwalk, I might be the only one here from Greenway Estates, but I'm sure they don't want the possibilities of this property behind them turning into the dump of eventually, like other properties that have been excavated in the past and end up becoming part of the dump. So that's all I have to say. Those are my concerns, and I know those are concerns of other people in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Did you say they already removing dirt from this farm?
Yes. On the frontage
no,
of Jefferson
no.
Pike.
Not from the site,
Okay,
not from the Richard Reeves site.
Okay, thank you.
It's not from Richard Reeves'
No,
side?
no, this is
Well,
the,
it's
this
really
is
close
the
to it if
old,
it isn't.
I suspect that's the old Matthews property you're looking at.
It is.
Yeah.
It is, and they're not
See,
subject
you
to
get those
our
two
condition.
mixed
Oh,
up.
okay, well,
Because it's on their own property.
oh, okay. Okay, I didn't know it was right next to it,
that's
so
fine.
I didn't know. But it is an eyesore already, just right there even, and people are concerned, so.
Yeah, that's one of the things we really want to prevent this becoming an eyesore out there. If this is allowed, you know,
Right.
this, we get into this debate of the dump, okay, the landfill. Do you realize, and I'm not trying to sway any one way or the other, regardless of where it's located, it's saved the taxpayers millions of dollars every year, and you know that it has by having a landfill there. Now, we also object to garbage coming in from somewhere else, but also the county gets a tipping fee if it does. So I don't have a good answer. This board doesn't have a good answer for that. But I don't want us to go back to the days prior to the 1960s when we didn't have a landfill. You know what people did? They pulled up to rural properties and dumped their garbage all over this county. We didn't have sites like we have now. And this is a whole lot better. And I remember the days when we had that going on in the county, because I was on the county commission at that time when we were able to get something done. And I never want to see us go back to those kinds of days. But you can imagine what is going to happen when that landfill closes out there, folks. You're going to have to pay to have garbage trucked probably out of this county to another landfill somewhere else, and that's going to be extremely, cost a lot of money. So, and I'm not trying to convince you one way or the other. I'm just stating some facts on that, and we do appreciate your comments and feel for you out there, but I don't know that we have a good answer for that landfill at this time. Maybe at some time in the future we will. But the time is limited on how much longer than they can go there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Sue Blakely, and once again, I apologize for my little sidekick, but his mama is the director of a mental health place, and when she's on call, she's on call. There's two things that I'm concerned about. Number one, the trucks. That the attorney kept saying the trucks are going to come through. The trucks are going to come through. Sooner or later, we're going to have trucks come through. This is going to save 60,000 trips, whatever he said. Sooner or later, that dirt is going to run out, so sooner or later, we're going to have trucks anyway. That's one thing. Number two was Mr. Reeves had told us 5 to 7 feet is as far down as he was going to go. That was verbal. That was a verbal comment he made during one of our community meetings. Now, it's been mentioned here that it could go down 10 to 14 feet. So what's your answers? I understand that it's a property and Mr. Reeves needs to recoup money, but it's zoned now for residential. I would like to see it kept as residential. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments.
My name is Michael Bove. I live on Jefferson Pike. I'll try to keep this short and to the point. We've already been notified that it's going to take at least 2 years. I believe in your ruling here that you have an extension for one time 6 months. How is that going to work out?
Well, the 6 months has been dropped now. At the end of, what is it, 1 year?
The permit is good for 6 months with a one-time 3-month extension. Right. Then the applicant would need to come before the board again.
Have to come back here.
Now,
permit.
would that be for each pit or would that be a one-time deal?
That would be for each time, if it's approved.
Each pit, you're talking about each
duration.
Pit? Okay.
Yeah, for the duration.
Okay, and as the gentleman stated before me, not to tie this up too long, good faith dealing is nice in theory, but again, that blasting has been going on. I've called the police department, the sheriff, I've even called BFI. No one seems to know who's doing the blasting. So in turn, nothing offensive to Mr. Reeves. If it goes on, who do we go to? And how do we contact him? Who's doing the policing? You mentioned about the drainage. The laws have changed since then, but I think the safety factor about fencing is still in place. And that eyesore that we have on Jefferson Pike, there's no fencing. And, okay, go ahead.
That site is not subject to any of the conditions for borough pit operations because it is on the same site owned by BFI, and they can remove sand from their site without having to go through any process. Once the sand removed site owned by the applicant, then it triggers the requirement to come before the board.
Well, if I put a garage on my property, I need to have a permit and codes, correct? They are in the county. Are they not under the same umbrella?
But the removal of sand on your property is permitted, correct? Because it's
Yes,
an
but wouldn't I have to
agricultural-
have a drainage? Would I not have to have a safety feature around there?
You're talking about any construction of your garage?
Anything that I do, I come under the county. I'm not, it's my property, I'd be the same as BFI.
Well, in the situation, the landfill operation, the permit, all that is monitored by the state, and the county doesn't have the authority, jurisdiction to go in and operate. There are certain things in the state, even though it's in the county, that the state is the one that does the monitoring over that particular project. The landfill comes under their state offices, not our office.
Okay, addressing something else that you brought up, that and I respectfully, from the get-go, I'll make this short, I respectfully ask you not to vote in the positive on this until you do get all the facts. Because, as you said, the attorney said that you could stop us at any time. Well, the damage is already done. So it'd be best to have all the facts before you vote on it and any concerns addressed. That's all. I'll just make it short. Thank you.
Wait just a minute. There may be some questions for you.
Sure. Go ahead.
No questions. Thank you so much for your comments.
Danielle, this is not going to follow under the 6-month deal. He gets to operate 1 year if we approve tonight.
No, sir. It's a 6-month permit with a 3-month extension. Once that extension has lapsed, then they would need to come before you for another permit.
He
However,
will be almost half through, though, in 9 months.
because of all the processes that they will have to undergo, they are just trying to find out if they can get the permit to proceed. If approval is granted tonight, they're still going to have to invest monies in engineering. Before they invest all that money, they just want to know if they can move forward rather than spending the money and doing all the investigation that's required before they can commence. Because of that time period that's going to lapse between any determination by the board tonight and the actual time where they can get a notice to proceed from engineering, it could be up to 6 months before they could even commence work. So what we did in the recommended conditions is in the condition that addressed the expiration date. Typically, when the board approves, that's the effective date, but we are recommending the effective date start at the date of issuance of a notice to proceed from engineering, simply because they're going to have to go through a state process and local engineering process before they can even start, which could take months.
Just one note on that, Danielle. If we approve this and they had to go through engineering and all that to what they're going to do on that site and what they're going to do about drainage, how deep they can dig, all that. At what process and during any of that engineering will the public be allowed to be in that? Will there be a public forum where those folks out there can be involved in that at all, just like they are here?
But typically, we do that in the office. There's no requirement for any type of advertisement. I don't have any problem with the public coming in, and in fact, if it's the wishes of the board, once we get the final drainage plan and stuff, we can send out some letters to set up a meeting to show it to them. It's just a little unusual, but we don't have any problem doing that.
And I don't want to keep beating it to death, but there again, that's where I think I am with this thing. You know, you say it's out of the norm for the public to be involved, and this is their last chance to do anything. And I still, again, you don't have the answers, so I don't have them, and it's hard for me to make a determination whether I really want to support this project without some things being not answerable. And you know, and it's not going to affect me. It's going to affect these folks in this subdivision out there, which I have the concern about.
Oh, well, hold that thought till we get through with all the testimony. Yes, sir.
My name is Tom Hollins. I live at 904 Wood Valley Drive. It's right on the corner of Jefferson Pike and Wood Valley, directly across the street from where they have already begun digging. And I understand now that property is probably owned by the Matthews family, or the Matthews property rather, than owned by BFI. And I don't understand where the property lines are. So forgive my ignorance and my confusion, but the pit that they have begun digging, whether it's BFI or Reeves or whoever, is 10 to 12 feet deep, and I do have a concern about that. And if BFI or the landfill does not have to have a permit to dig that property, then why does Mr. Reeves have to have a permit to dig that property?
Okay, here's the law. If you are digging on your own property, you do not have to have a permit as long as you don't take it off of your property.
Okay.
You can dig a pond on your own property. You do not have to have a permit for that. BFI owns the property, so they can dig. That's the law.
Understood. And there is nothing anybody can do about that. They do not have to come back along and replenish any of that. They can leave that just as they have the property along that drive going back up to the landfill that is just barren. Is that correct? Or is that's not a concern of this?
That's correct. At the time BFI bought the Matthews property, it's contiguous with theirs, which made it's one property, so they own both of them. The road to our landfill back in through there is actually owned by the landfill. That's an easement the county has, even though it's a county road. The landfill actually owns that, and so, as Mr. Cantrell has stated, if you move dirt on your own property, you're allowed to do that. And so, again, the operation itself is monitored and by the state versus our office, and any requirements for them to reclaim that land would come from the state.
Go ahead and proceed with your comments now at this time.
The only further thing I would like to say is with regards to this, and we don't know what's in the plan, we can't do the engineering until we do this and that, and it hasn't been so long that I heard someone say, you have to pass it to see what's in it. I just take warning. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'd just like to make one comment to this gentleman here about
Come on back to the podium.
About this procedure right here. What they did explain to you about the difference between the landfill and this project here. I guess with giving Mr. The applicant, Mr. Reeves, the benefit of the doubt, where you all keep reference to where they've already dug on the road near Jefferson Pike, that is county land. I mean, that's
BFI.
The BFI landfill property, and that is regulated by the state. And if you all do have any concerns about that, I'd suggest that you contact your state representative, because that's regulated by the state.
I live my property line may be 50 to 75 feet from a hole 12 feet deep. And I can walk out on my front porch and it's just horrible. And I would hate to see the rest of the area look like that. That's my concern now. I understand the difference now between the two properties.
There's so much out there that it appears that it's been mismanaged, and we do feel for you guys.
Well, I appreciate that, but I'd rather somebody did something.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else?
My name is Roy Lelou. I live on Jefferson Pike, right next door to this project. Anyways, they dig out all this dirt, and eventually they're going to have to truck a whole bunch of dirt back here, I guess, and that's going to be on public roads. Originally, it started when I bought here 5 years ago. They had umpteen homes designated to be built here, which would have generated a good amount of tax revenue for the county. Then it got down to 600 homes, and then it ended up, Mr. Reeves bought it, I guess. I don't know why BFI didn't buy it in the first place. Instead, we would have saved all this nonsense now. And as far as having another dump, I'll pay dump fees if we have to close this. That was the original plan. This was supposed to close fairly recent. That didn't happen. So this dump will never, ever close in my lifetime, probably, unless I get to 100. But, you know, like I said, I'll pay for that. So they're going to truck the dirt in, and I don't understand what we're going to do with the rocks after they get done dirt. I see down there at the hole they have now, umpteen rocks just laying there. And we've got rocks next door. I live right next door to this. I got just nearly 2 acres right there. And rocks are sticking up through the field now when they cut the grass off for feed for the cows and roll it. They have to lift the mowers in various places, humongous rocks. I've got some sticking up in my yard. So we got this rock garden, and I don't know how you're going to get away from not having to truck in thousands of loads of dirt if you're going to not have this really big depression. And I didn't buy this home to be living there at the dump for 20 years. In fact, the county ought to probably give all the residents here a tax break, because we're going to take a beating on selling our properties. And initially, I mean, that's not the idea of the game, but basically that's a lot of people's retirement money, which will go down the tubes. But anyways, it's just a mess. And unless they want to give us a substantial tax break to ease the pain, or we're going to have to truck it away in hell and gone somewhere, I don't care where, but I'll pay for it.
Thanks.
I'd just as soon pay for a little bit as to take his beating and have this.
Thank you very much for your comments. We appreciate that. Anyone else? Mr. Reeves.
Okay. I should have spoke first. I think I could have made a lot of people's mind a lot more at ease than some of the things I've heard. I'll try to make this brief. I bought this property in January of 2010. It became available due to a foreclosure, and anyone had the right to buy this property. The landfill could have bought this property if they so desired, but I had the opportunity to buy it. It was zoned for 600 houses. I met with the residents out there because honestly, this property, let's not daydream. There's no way you can develop this property and put any additional houses on it because, as everybody said, the value of the homes in that area are going down, and to build additional houses at this time without some type of amenities package, it wouldn't make any sense. The comment was made that we might be digging 10, 15, 20 feet deep. The deepest point on this site of soil is 9 feet deep. When I met with the residents out there, I did commit that we would not dig over 5 to 7 foot deep, and part of that is topsoil that's going to be pushed aside and used to reclaim the land. Excuse me. This land is sort of a rolling, there's some very high points in this land and there's some low points, and when we excavate the land, we're going to level it off. We're not going to have a 5 foot or 7 foot deep area, deeper than it is now. We're having Weiser Company, local firm, is going to be doing the engineering studies for this. Murphy & Murphy, local firm, is going to be doing all the, getting all the permits and doing all the legal work. The reason I want to do this project is there's not a whole lot you can do with this piece of land except what I'm wanting to do, but I'm wanting to set a standard of a way to provide clay for our landfill. You know, you're talking about the Johns property. I haven't seen it, but I've heard a lot about it. And I do not want to see this happen in the county if we can come up with a new way of doing business. And I feel like this project, through engineering, through going through all of the requirements and proper procedures through our local engineer, and the state is going to be involved in this. And we're not just going to be able to go out there and just run and gun. We're going to do a 5-acre tract at a time. We've got to do everything that's involved in the procedures and requirements that both state and county are going to require of us. So it's not something that has been done before. We're doing about this in a totally different and new way. I met with the neighbors out there. There are 93 homeowners. I don't know, I think there were probably 40 or maybe 50 of them present when we met. And we talked about an amenities package, which is not part of this process, but we are going to have a really nice lake engineered on this property, a walking trail from this subdivision to get down to the property. And all this is in the future. I can't engineer this whole project at once because it's not going to all be approved at once. We've got a 6-month permit, a 6-month time period, a 3-month
3-month extension.
3-month extension, and it's going to be reviewed after that. So it would be foolish for me to have this whole project engineered when after 9 months I might not be able to continue. So I'm asking for an opportunity of trying to find a new way of providing clay for our landfill, which they've got to have, without destroying the land and making it something that we can use as a standard to move forward. And that's my plan. I have no other.
Wait just a minute, Mr. Reeves.
Other than, Mr. Chairman, I could have sold this property to the landfill. And since it's adjoining property, I don't know what the requirements would be on that. But I assume since it would be adjoining property, that they could proceed in a different way than I have plans to proceed.
Joe?
Mr. Reeves, the question I have is this. You say there's high points. In other words, is there hills there that you can push off back in these holes?
It's going to be leveled off. I mean, it's sort of a rolling
When you get
hill.
through with it, sir, when you get through with it, will there be holes?
No, sir. No, sir. They will not. The county engineer won't let me have
Will the
holes.
elevation be below the low point now?
Below the low point now? Probably so, because it's
If you
5-acre tract.
remove 5 to 7 feet from this 71 acres, when you get through, how low will that 5 to 7 feet be?
Some of the area we're talking about is only 2 foot deep. It's
Sir,
only 2 foot. some of it is only 2 foot deep. The deepest point out there is 9 foot. So if we smooth it all out, I would say the area would probably be 3.5 to 4 foot lower than it is right now.
So how would you drain? There's 8 different pits. How would you tie all those together to drain them? That's the problem that I'm having.
One on the bottom left is going to be a lake. This bottom lake, bottom area back here on the very back, all that's going to be a lake.
So how do you drain those other 7 holes?
There will be an engineering study that will have to be approved by the state and the county before I can't tell you, I'm not an engineer, but I'm going to have an engineering firm that's already, I've already contracted.
So y'all you're asking us to vote tonight. I'm not trying to give you a hard time. I personally think it would be nice to get clay that close to them. But also, I got to consider all these people that live here that, you know, pay tax dollars. It's not as fortunate as you and I are, maybe. This is all they own, probably. I'm on this board for one reason, and one reason only, to be fair to these people that's already living here. That's the reason I'm on this board, for no other reason. And in my mind, I've got to know that these people are protected. And tonight, the county would be well off if they bought your clay, no doubt. But I've got to, these people that own this home, I cannot go home tonight and lay down and sleep if they get screwed in this deal, if you excuse my language. I've got to know that there's not going to be dirt, water holes left for mosquitoes to eat these people up after it's all over. Would you mind coming back another month or 2 months from now and telling me how you're going to tie these together and drain them so they won't be mosquito pits? That's the only problem. I would like to see you sell the dirt to the landfill because I think it would save myself a tax dollar. But also, I got to consider all these people that's sitting back here in the back. That's the problem I have with voting tonight for it.
You're asking me to spend a considerable amount of money on an engineering project.
They have all their life savings tied up in these homes. You understand? If Mr. Corbin, if Mr. Dale, I have a lot of respect for Dale. I have a lot of respect for him. If Mr. Dale could tell me himself that this could be properly drained without leaving mosquito holes and water standing, I wouldn't mind voting for this because I think it would save the county money. But if Mr. Dale does not think that this can be properly drained, then I got to consider all these fine people sitting behind me back here. That I'm only here for one thing. I'm on this board for one thing, to be nice and protect the people that already live in an area. Because I had bad taste from this board one time years ago. And that is the reason I am on this board, and no other reason.
93 homeowners out there, and we only heard from 7 people.
If you can assure me there'll be no mosquito pits left, water standing to have these deadly viruses, deadly insects stinging all those people out there, then I'm for. I wish the county could get this. You know, it'd be cheaper on the county. I mean, you're gonna make a lot of money, but also the taxpayer's gonna save money.
I just want to find a new way for us to excavate clay and try to preserve and reclaim the land. And I think this is the way to do it.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a follow-up question. And I think this might answer some of the questions or concerns he may have, and probably mine too. With looking at this map right here, Mr. Reeves, and in the areas in the dark are where you're going to be removing the soil, and like you say, at the deepest point, and we don't know which ones these are, would be 9 foot, but most of it's going to be 5 to 7. Now I want to make sure when I say this that I'm correct. Of course, the sites that you already have that are in the dark that are being soil removed, the first layer of topsoil is going to be removed off of these sites, and it could be, I don't know, let's say benefit of the doubt, 2 foot of topsoil. Okay, then that topsoil will be put back in these areas, but I would assume you say you're going to level this area up. In the white areas where you're not actually digging soil, that's still part of the property. It would be realistically to say that you would dozier that in, some of that topsoil would be moved to these lower areas to make all that,
That's all woods.
to make that all, that's all what?
Woods,
Okay, it's all wooded area. In the white is all wooded area,
yes,
and it's just gonna stay wooded area.
absolutely.
Okay, well, let me ask you this, and I don't know if you've considered it. Of course, I know the most important thing to the landfill is the clay, not the topsoil. Do you plan to, and I believe in what you say, because I know you, I've known you most of my life, so I know, when you give your word, I understand, I know you're an honorable person. I think you'll do what you say you'll do. With what's being said, and I know those are, do you plan on possibly bringing any soil in, topsoil wise, to, if you needed to to level this up, to make this look nice,
I plan on bringing any additional soil in, but I will level the whole area so that it won't be different elevations in the land. I want to reclaim the land where it can be reused.
All right. So in other words, and getting to what he's saying, if you dig deeper in one of these areas than you do other, when it's all said and done, whether it's going to be 2 foot, 4 foot below the low level now, it's all going to be at that level, not deep, not 7 foot here, 2 foot here. You're going to get it all level where
Leveled out. Each section will be reclaimed, leveled out, topsoil will be put back on it, reseeded.
All right. Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
I've been out to look at that land. It's not level now. The land is not level. It needs a lot of work on it, regardless of whether you dig or you don't dig. And I can see how you can level that out and probably make it look a lot better than what it is right now. Because, I don't know, the neighbors out there, it looks like an eyesore to me already. With the way it's grown up, it needs to be cleared up, it needs to be leveled off. And what you're saying to us is that once you've taken the clay out, you put the topsoil back on, you're going to level that where you're not going to have holes left as we see on this other property in question that so many people have been concerned about. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. I have a question for Mr. Dale. Dale, I have a lot of respect for you. Can this be drained properly after he's through with it?
You can take any property. You could take the property that BFI has now. If you have enough money and do it, you can fix it where it will drain properly, and that's what is going to be required of his property.
So he will be required to drain this properly?
That's correct. Now, when they bring in the reclamation plan, he stated that, it'll be leveled out. And so what we'll be looking for, one of the things we'll be looking for, they should give us a final topo that they're going to grade this to. In other words,
you're saying it can be drained?
Yes, it can. Now, there are some sinkholes on this property that interconnect, we think, with each other, maybe with the river. So we'll have to look at those as we get to the plan and see what it says. But you can grade, level out property so that it drains properly. Most of it right now drains back toward the river. There's some that drain forward. So we just have to look at the topo, like I say, the final topo, to see how it drains, and then go accordingly from there.
Will your office and the state see that this property is properly drained?
Yeah, we'll be both of us involved. State will do spot checks. Our office will do weekly checks when they're doing the work, and as it calms down.
You will require Mr. Reeves to properly drain this when he's through with it.
That's correct.
Thank you.
I got one follow-up.
Keith.
Mr. Chairman, on the, and I'm looking at the map, it's really hard to tell. The biggest area there is about 20-something acres. This end that's nearest the subdivision right there, Danielle, do we know, and then the other little spot down here, those two spots seem to be the closest areas that are going to be excavated from. that's closest to the subdivision, how far, do we know how far that, from that property line where they're going to be digging to the subdivision nearest house right there, how far that area is in between there?
Property lines from residential properties, I believe it's a minimum of 150. On the scale that we have here, for the purposes of the hearing tonight, it is hard to determine, but they're required to be 150 feet, the activity from the residential property line.
Okay, well, let me ask you this, and I haven't been out there, and Mr. Reeves may know better than I do. Is at those closest points there to that subdivision, at these two spots, is that area in between there, is that wooded in any way, or is it buffered in any way? Well, in other words, if those houses that back up to that area, can they see that property, or is it, I wish I had a pointer where I could show you, but.
That's,
okay, like, on the 4.31 acres, on the top of it, which would be closest to those houses back. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Like, right here, this site right here, these houses that are going to be, the area right in here, is that just green space? That's not any tree lines there.
Green space, that is not woods.
And then, of course, the other closest point, which right here is kind of treed, but all this area right here is going to be closest to the subdivision. And that's
50 foot from the property line, but then probably from the actual house, it's probably over 200 feet from the house.
Okay. 200 feet. I'm just trying to think about, I mean, I know 200 feet's a long way. I'm just trying to think about when they start digging here and digging here, these areas not being buffered, them having to see that for a while, but because everything else is definitely farther away. I'm just concerned about these two areas right here for the residents.
But it is 5 acre tracts. It's only 5 acre tracts.
I understand. Thank you.
Not a whole lot of trees on that property. There's a lot of saplings, there's a lot of bushes.
Right. And I understand you're just saying 5 acre town. I know this thing's not all going to be dug up at one time. Thank you.
Any other?
Mr. Reeves, would you be willing to start at that south end of the property and work your way towards Jefferson Pike for the initial work, or do you have to start all?
We're going to start at where it says 9.76 acres.
Okay, that was my question.
Because
so you are starting.
That's where we're actually thinking. That's where the lake is going to go.
Okay, and that's where you're going to initially start your
Yes.
work. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Wait, okay.
I do have one, and I don't mean to keep beating everything up. If you start on this site right here first, Mr. Reeves, and then you are going to this away, are you all just going to make roads or paths right here to get to this? Like, so if you start here, you're going here to get to the landfill property?
We've got to have a road will be part of our plan to actually, because there'll be an area on the landfill property where we'll actually dump all the clay. It'll all be dumped in one spot.
Okay, and then they're going to distribute it however they need it on there.
Get it as they need it.
All right, sir, thank you.
I do want to say that the planning department has provided, I know y'all got it because it says Board of Zoning Appeals, provided an extensive recommendation as to how we have to proceed. I mean, we're under a whole lot of scrutiny. There has to be a lot of engineering plans, a lot of permits through state and county. And if you look at this proposal that the planning department made, you know, we're not going to be, I really think when we get through with this, two and a half years down the road, I feel very confident that we're going to develop a new way of excavating clay that I think everyone's going to like.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Reeves.
Thank you.
Anyone else? We're still not through with the public hearing. Anyone else? We'll close the public hearing now. We're open for comments.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment or ask Dale, and I want to try to distinguish between the county landfill and what we're doing here. And just like you had alluded to before, with the county, or I mean with the, not the county landfill, with the BFI or whatever, all that is regulated by the state. We have very little say there. If we have a problem with the BFI, then you would have to notify the state officials and they'd have to deal with that. But what's different with this project here and what Mr. Reeves does, your office and would have, we would have some say so in what happens if we have some problems or some things that go on there, correct?
That's correct. Under this situation, until we have a problem, we just issue a stop order and we can stop what they're doing, have them come back to you in the next meeting or whatever.
Well, and I'm not saying, and I don't want to keep alluding to that. I think Mr. Reeves will do what he says he wants to do. I'm just trying to give some assurance to the folks in this area near this project in this subdivision that that if things don't proceed in the way that they say they do, then we do have some control on this, and we can intervene and make them get back on track if they're not doing what they're supposed to do.
That's correct. Any complaint will either call into our office or to the codes office, and then we would send somebody out to check out and answer the complaint.
Joe.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know how you could get this answered, but I just wondered if the people that came here against it tonight are satisfied from what Mr. Reeves has promised to level it back up, and Mr. Dale has said it has to be drained.
I don't know, Joe, but we're not going to open this back up for a public hearing. Ask everybody if they're pleased.
Okay,
I'm sure a lot of them are not going to be pleased. Regardless, so we've got to make up our mind what we've got to do and give these folks an answer. I think we've tried to explain the procedure by which we will continue with this. And all meetings will be open to the public. And I'm going to ask, if this is approved, I'm going to ask that it be put on the website. Now, it'll be up to you whether you want to attend and have further input into what happens if it is approved. Joe?
I got a couple of comments I'd like to make. First, one thing is I personally feel, and I don't live out there, but I personally feel, everybody knows the landfill's been there for umpteen years. I've been living here all my life. Nobody wanted the landfill to get as big as it did, but it has. And I think most of the subdivisions that were built out there were built after the landfill was established. I may be wrong, but I think they have been. And I feel like that our county has got enough checks and balances in place. If we did approve this, that everything would be drained back like it was supposed to, and it would be okay, and that, to me, it's helping keep, like he said, a lot of truckloads of clay off that highway, which that highway is a big mess out there anyway. We all know that. And I guess the other comment I have is, Dale, who would they get in touch with about complaining about the big mess that's out there right now? Is there a avenue that the residents can go through to stop what's going on out there right now?
You can call the Solid and Hazardous Waste section of TDEC in Nashville. That's the office that actually inspects that landfill once a month. Or they perhaps could get in touch with the one of the legal people, representative, state representative Jim Tracy, or one of those guys, and ask them for their help in doing it. I know the same inspector inspects our landfill as does BFI there, and they show up once every month or two. It's usually unannounced when they come in and do their inspection, and they write it up, and then they follow up on any complaints they get from the public on that.
Any other comments from the board? let me say to those of you who are here with your concerns, we've heard your concerns and we've listened to it. I don't want you to go away from here thinking that we have not, or that we have some kind of an agenda. This board does not do that. We try to make this where we follow the legal procedures that are set up by us, for us, by the county commission and the state of Tennessee. There are legal obligations that you have when you sit on this board. If you were a member of this board, you would be required to follow those legal procedures as well. Now, all meetings will be open to the public. Any of them that you want to attend, you're certainly welcome to be there. Mr. Reeves has given his word that this will not become an eyesore. Now, is it going to be perfect out there? No, it's not going to be perfect. Some things you're not going to like, but be patient. If this is approved by the board, I'm asking that you be patient. You have an avenue to talk to our county engineer at any time about any phase of this if it is approved. And if it's not approved, you're going to see a whole lot more traffic out there on Jefferson Pike, and all of you are not going to be happy with that because clay is going to have to be purchased by the landfill as long as it lasts. That's part of the legal obligation that they have, which is enforced by the state. Any other comments by the board? I'll entertain a motion on this time.
I move we approve this with the recommendations we have on this sheet of paper, plus when the planning starts doing the development, that, like Dale said, he would be glad to notify them to, have a meeting or whatever and add that to it.
Okay. These would be added to the public record.
Second that.
We have a second. Call a roll, please.
Let me confirm that for just a moment. You want to be sure that the recommended conditions that were added and also the requirement for all of the meetings to be, the public to be notified? Is that basically what you were saying?
Put it on the website. Call a roll, please.
Keith Bratcher?
Yes.
Joe Crowell?
I guess I'll have to say yes. I believe Mr. Dale will enforce this. If he didn't give me the answer he gave me a while ago, I'd say no right now. But I have faith in Mr. Dale Corbett, so
You're voting positive.
I'm going to vote positive.
Okay. Joe?
Joe Machado?
Yes.
Jerry Sartain?
Yes.
Thane Cantrell?
Yes.
Motion carries.
It is
sir.
approved at this point. Thank you. For those of you who need to ease out, you may go ahead and do that. We will proceed with the rest of our agenda. The next item we have is a request by Skill Construction, and this is a request for variance for relief on a front yard setback. What do you have on that, please?
Thank you. Application 2012-45, filed by Skill Construction Company, involves the property located at 3002 Landview Drive. It lies within Commissioner Tiffany Jones' district. The lot size is 0.36 acres and zone residential 15. The platted lot size is 0.36, but once the right-of-way is acquired or taken from the property, it's 0.30 acres. The applicant is seeking a variance to reduce the front yard setback requirement from 40 to 10 feet. This is a corner lot that's located in this subdivision, and the acquisition of right-of-way from Veterans Parkway took some of the property area from this lot and makes it difficult to provide the two 40-foot front yard setbacks for corner lots. The applicant is seeking a variance from the property line adjacent to Veterans Parkway for the reduction to allow him to build up to 10 feet off that property line. This application meets the criteria for variance approval. The acquisition of right-of-way was not of the applicant's doing, but of an entity building a road. The other factors that affect the placement of a structure on this particular lot is the homeowner's covenants and restrictions require the development of homes with side entry garages. And so he's going to have to shift the structure to one side to allow himself to access his garage. Though we do not enforce homeowners' covenants and restrictions, that was one of the things that was affecting the applicant's ability to build a home on this particular site. I received 3 informational phone calls on this particular application, and apart from that, we received no other phone calls. And these are homes in the subdivision that this property is located in, and we took photos of properties across the street that was not part of the subdivision, however, across from Veterans Parkway. And that concludes our presentation.
Do we have anyone here representing this request? You'll come around, please.
Construction company. And as far as, to be honest with you, my request was, I was requested by the city attorney to request this from y'all. So that's the reason I'm here. So other than that, if
Any questions from the board? Joe?
When you build on this piece of property, would the driveway come in on Landview and not off of Medical Center? Or not Medical Center,
it has to come off of Landview.
Would, okay,
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. We'll open this for a public hearing for anyone who'd like to speak on this request. Close the public hearing. Do we have a motion on it?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve.
I'm sorry, wait, we have someone. You better move fast. Sorry. I didn't see you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'm Sterling Farmer. I live at 3006 Landview, which is north of the property. My property actually adjoins this property here. Due to what it appears that the city is taking for Veterans Parkway, it has greatly reduced the size of this lot. You know, to put that house, of course, this is going to be the first house coming in the subdivision, which is, I think, not only devalues, I feel like my property, but also the subdivision as well. You know, the changing of the restrictions, everybody has side entry garages. I have some concerns from standpoint of it being so close to Veterans Parkway, it obstructing view to the left. You know, when you're coming out, maybe not the house, but landscape. You know, I just, that's really all I have, which is probably already obvious.
Yeah, where do you live?
I live at 3006, which is the house adjoining this property. Yep, one right next to the lot.
Right. Any questions? Thank you, appreciate that. Anyone else? Close the public hearing.
I make a motion to approve.
Have a motion to be approved. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Have a second. Call the roll, please.
Bratcher,
Yes.
Joe Crowell,
Yes.
Joe Machoto,
Yes.
Jerry Sartain,
Yes.
Thane Cantrell.
Yes.
Motion carries, sir.
Okay, it is approved.
Mr. Chairman.
The next item is
Chairman.
a request by, am I hearing feedback?
Chairman, it's been 2 hours. Can we have about a 3-minute break?
Want a little break?
About 3 minutes.
Okay, we'll have about a 3-minute break, stretch, get back to this. Sorry, folks, just wait. We'll be back in about 2-3 minutes. Okay, we are back in session now. Okay, the next item we have is a request by Kevin Buck, who is requesting a conditional use permit to seasonal hunted woods and corn maze, and also a variance relief from the parking area.
Thank you. Application 2012-46 filed by Kevin Buck involves the property located at 305 Double Springs Road and a property located off John Bragg Highway for a total of 18.9 acres. It's a residential 15-zone property, and Mr. Buck is seeking temporary conditional use approval for seasonal haunted woods and corn maze with variance relief from the development standard requiring paved parking. This particular request has been presented to the board in 2010, 2011, and was approved by the board. Those permits operated without any complaints from any adjacent neighbors or anyone who had attended the event. We are recommending approval with conditions. We received one informational phone call. These are the properties that are being affected. The entrance and exit will be off of John Bragg Highway. We posted the sign on the site. And that concludes our presentation. We'll just flip through some more photos, and if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Do we have anyone here representing this request? If you'll come around, please.
My name is Kevin Buck. I live at 412 Double Springs, which is on the opposite end of this property. As Danielle has said, I've came before you in 2011, and this year for a seasonal condition just for the month of October. Nothing will change on the property. There's no structures being built. Nothing will change. It will go back to exactly like it is today, November 1st.
Last year, when you were in operation, how many groups do you estimate that you had?
As in people?
Yes.
Last year, on an average, probably about 200 to 350 a night. I'm hoping this year will be a little bit more, but rain and the seasons had a problem with this last year.
But that was not every night in October that you would have
that. Oh, that was only 4 nights. Last year I operated on Friday and Saturday. This year I've actually cut it back, and I'm only going to be operating on Saturday nights from 7 p.m. to midnight.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you. You may be seated. We'll open this for a public hearing for anyone who'd like to speak on this. Close the public hearing. We have a motion on it.
Move to be approved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion to be approved. Have a second. Call the roll, please.
Keith Bratcher.
Yes.
Joe Crowell.
Yes.
Joe Machado.
Yes.
Jerry Sartain.
Yes.
Van Cantrell.
Yes.
Motion carries, sir.
Is approved. The next item is a request by Derek Robertson, who is requesting a conditional use permit for a 3-day special event with live music and on-site camping. What do you have on that, please?
Thank you. Application 2012-47, filed by Derek Robertson, involves property owned by Carl Brandon. This property is located at 5108 and 5152 Rucker Christiana Road. It's a 9.3 acre site that's zone residential 15. They are seeking temporary conditional use permit approval for a 3-day special event to include live music and on-site camping for a property located in the R15 zone. The event will be held on the dates of October 5th, 6th, and 7th, which is a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It will commence at noon on October 5th, which is the Friday, and the event overall will end on October 7th at 1 p.m. They are proposing to benefit the charity Homes for Wounded Warriors. They are proposing to have food, music, camping on the site. They anticipate about 200 people will attend the event over the 3-day period. The applicant will have emergency personnel to be on site as well as security. We have received 3 phone calls in opposition to the request. We received one informational call. The concerns were noise playing well into the night and just overall what, the event can turn into a reoccurring event like Bonnaroo. So these are photos of the surrounding area. The site is well vegetated, so you can barely see, but they have provided, they provided a drawing which staff, prepared for you so you could actually see how the site was going to be laid out. But as you'll see, they'll have like camping, to the outdoor camping in the blue area. The green areas are parking for RVs and cars. There's a VIP area that's shaded yellow, VIP entrance, that's the purple color, and then the regular entrance and exit to the site. And the red structure indicates the portable bathroom facilities. And on their drawing, they indicated 3 other areas, but didn't label them to tell me what they were going to be, but that might be the bandstands. The applicant is here, they could answer that question. And staff is recommending approval with conditions. And that concludes our presentation.
Do we have anyone here representing this? If you'll come around, please.
Hello, I'm Derek Robertson, part owner of Shorty's Pizza Bus, and this is the other owner. And we thank you for giving us an opportunity to come down here and apply for this permit.
I'm Daniel Rodenberg. I'm the other partner for the Shorty's Pizza Bus. We are actually attempting to do a local music showcase along with benefiting the charity Homes for Wounded Warriors. Ticket proceeds after dumpsters, porta-johns, EMTs, security are all going to be going to that charity. Excuse me. The purple sites we're also parking is that's what we propose there. They're just extra blank spots in the property. We'd be setting people out. I believe the 2 on the bottom are where we're planning on throwing RVs if they are to arrive, as well as school buses or band buses in the case of people coming with a lot of equipment. I got one band coming from New Orleans, and they have 7 members, and I got another band coming from Chattanooga, and they've got 2 of them are from Chat, the rest of them are from Murfreesboro, and they're all coming together to do a 9-piece set.
How would you advertise this?
We have an event page on Facebook, and that's essentially what we've got going on so far. It says there's 137 people said they're going to be attending on that event page. We're looking to publicize our business or market our business. Every T-shirt or every ticket that's going to be purchased is going to come with a Shorty's T-shirt along with a list of bands on there. So it's a local music showcase to promote music that's usually played house to house in Murfreesboro, which usually, from my experience, doesn't go over too well. It's usually about 30 minutes, and then it's kind of shut down. You get one band to play, and then the rest will not.
Tell me what when do you start exactly, and what time, and when do you close at night? When will it be over?
Well, the bands, I believe Friday we were kind of toying with 3 p.m. because you'll still have school going on in process till 5 or 6 p.m. with the college in there. So probably 3 to midnight the bands would play on Friday. Saturday we might open at noon to give it a couple extra hours in there. And then Sunday we're doing a bluegrass country breakfast. So it'd be like 10 to 3 p.m. or 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. would be the Sunday proposal.
So even those 3 nights, you're not going to have any late night music and operation?
Scheduling the bands so that the bands that are electrified will go on first. Those are up to the headliner, and then after that will be acoustical music after that. So you wouldn't be able to hear that unless you were actually sitting right there listening to it.
I didn't hear Saturday night hours. How late were you going to play the bands?
5 bands are especially the electrified, not the acoustic, to end around midnight.
Meant for both Friday and Saturday. Okay.
And we both work Bonnaroo and several other festivals, and we don't ever want this to get anything like Bonnaroo. So
I think Bonnaroo has about 700 acres available. We're looking at about 9. I've done event staffing at Bonnaroo 5-6 years. I had about 105 people working under me this year out of Bonnaroo doing ticket sales. bathroom liaison is what they call it. It's just the bathroom attendant. They walk up and they have soap and things like that available. But
I have a couple of questions, Mr. Chairman. This event, is this going to be a one-time thing, or is this going to be a annual thing? What?
We don't have any intention for making it annually, unless it's something that goes over really good and everybody has, you know, if everybody thinks that it was a really great thing, we might try again for next year. But the reason we're doing this is because we have Shorty's Pizza Bus. I don't know if anybody here has heard of us or had our pizza. But we're going to be introducing 2 more different ones, one a Mexican food bus and one a K-Jamaican jerk chicken bus. And we're going to have that food available, and that's basically what this is for. So everybody, as many people as we can get to try the new food and see if it's something that people would like. And then from then on, we might have more than one bus in Murfreesboro. But that's the whole basis for it.
Okay. I got a few other questions. With the advertising and everything you're going to do, how many bands do you plan on having there? I mean, are you inviting for those 3 nights?
30 bands, and there's going to be the acoustical stage and the other stage. So you'll have, there's like 15 per day, and 9 or 10 per day, and not including the Sunday breakfast brunch, which is all bluegrass. But as far as the electrified acts go, I'd say there's probably on the electrified stage 4 or 5 on Friday and 5, maybe 6 on Saturday.
Okay, but you're saying about 30 bands. Let me ask you this. With your advertisement stuff, I mean, on a each day basis, I know it may vary from Friday to Saturday to Sunday, but how many people do you anticipate having on there at one time?
That the big day would be Saturday. Everybody will probably most people will leave and not stay around for the bluegrass breakfast. But Friday, probably 100 to 130 maybe, and Saturday, probably 200. But it would be half of the same people and different people that we call day trippers, people who had to go to school and work on Friday and they could only show up on Saturday. So
Okay.
never more than 200.
Okay, and I know you say you're going to have EMTs and medical folks there and security. And are you going to have security on the inside? And what about, have you hired a off-duty police officer? What about the traffic flow in and out of the place?
Our contact is at the local police department here, Officer Primus. He says if we get permitted here tonight, then we'll call him and he'll set it up through his annex. And we're going to have during what we call peak hours, from early evening into when the band stop playing on Friday and Saturday, there'll be he said either uniformed or ununiformed officer, our choice, will be there for that time period. And then they will kind of slide by once in a while besides the officers we have on site just to make sure everything there is good.
Thank you, sir. That's all I have.
Jerry.
I've got a few questions, Mr. Chairman. Have you talked to your neighbors about this? You got some houses that are within like 500 feet.
Most of the neighbors are actually going to show up. So most of the neighbors do know about it. They have been invited. If we know who they are, if Carl knows who they are, they've been invited. And if he doesn't know them, then I can't answer that. If everybody knows.
So you really don't have a signed petition or anything saying that they're okay with it?
No.
This was told to us that the reason for this was for the Homes for Wounded Warriors. Can you tell me what you hope to contribute to those?
All proceeds from ticket sales goes to the Wounded Warriors Foundation, which is the Minnesota Vikings' Jared Allen, the sack master. And we're also going to try to get in with the local veterans and see if we can do something for them, which is something we are doing also, where we're going to bring the pizza bus over there and give them free pizza twice a year, and local food banks also, because we're going to have everybody bring food with them, and we'll store up all that food and then take it down to the food banks.
Will alcohol be served?
No.
What about the campers? What are they going to do with their potty deposits?
Shamrock Septic is providing portable toilets.
Okay.
They're a local Murfreesboro business also.
No campfires?
We're having no campfires in any of the camping sites. However, we are planning on having one fire on Saturday night. That's in the open area, controlled area. It's the area we burn in all the time for all the farm debris and everything that normally gets burned at the site.
Thank you.
Go.
Sir, you're only going to have 200 people. You're going to have 30 bands. Those bands donating their time? All donation?
And, we have one guy we're going to be giving some gas money to coming from Chattanooga, but other than that, all the bands have donated their time and their.
I got another question. How can you say you're advertising this on the internet? You're saying?
Yes, sir. We have our Shorty's Pizza Bus website.
Okay. How can you say you'll only have 200
Facebook.
people? You gonna cut the sales off, tickets off at 200?
Well, it would be 200 per day, so we will cut those off at.
That's all you would allow would be 200 per day.
That's correct.
If you had 1,000 that wanted to come there, you wouldn't let them come?
No, it's too big. We don't want to get involved in anything like that. And
Right.
that would just be too monstrous for us anyway.
Thank you a lot.
Go.
Now, let me make sure I understand this right. No stage loud music after midnight, right? Two nights, and then Sundays it's going to break off early. Okay.
Go.
How about alcohol?
We're providing no alcohol at all. We don't have any beer sales tents or anything. We're not having anything to do with that.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I would see it if I was going to address you're asking about the local petition. At the top of this yellow, what we call the VIP area, or our production alley, that's where the bands are going to be going in, turning around, doing that whole deal. Straight out, it's going to be facing towards the CSX tracks right there, and there's two neighbors across the way, so the sound's going to be pushed over the train tracks, and I believe two of Carl's friends live on that side. And if I'm not mistaken, Carl's father actually owned all that land based around that. He owned, was it 104 acres at one point?
And we actually got some the monster tarps that they put on the sides of the auto carriers that they use when they pull them on trains, and those sound like crazy, and they're going to be going up on all the sides. Plus, the motorhomes will be parked on the other side of some of the photos that you saw, right where it says Rucker Christiana, where that purple arrow is. There's trees right there, and we're going to actually put the RVs in a big circle there, like circle the wagons, so that'll also keep the most sound down as we possibly can. But the sound actually projects, if it projects, back toward the railroad tracks. So we're basically doing everything we can to make it easy on everybody.
Any other questions? Thank you. You may be seated. We'll open this for a public hearing for anyone who'd like to speak on it. If you'll come around this time, please.
Mark Murphy. I live at 5220 Rucker Christiana. I'd be in the property to the left on the map that adjoins the property. I want to say I was not one of the people that called to complain. I wanted to come to the meeting and find out what was going on first. No one from the event has contacted me. I just saw the sign posted and wanted to come find out what was going on. Also wanted to say I've made my living from the music business, and I've never complained about any events that they've had next door. They have had a lot of gatherings, I guess you'd call them, that were unofficial events. I appreciate them coming before the commission if they're going to try to do an event there to make it more official and go through the correct procedures. I've never complained to any events they've had there before. There have been situations where I've been kept awake nights because they do play all night sometimes. And I, again, never complained, never had a problem with it. There may be some night when I want to go all night making music, and I wouldn't want the neighbors to complain on me. I don't like, you know, remember when I was a kid and you'd get big ideas and want to do something, and, you know, I don't want to be the person shutting down people's fun. That being said, I do have a couple of concerns. One would be I would be concerned about a Bonnaroo Light, a music event that would be something ongoing if it was successful and being an annual thing. I don't think this area is really set up to handle an official event like this. It's a small winding country road, and I appreciate that the gentlemen are not serving alcohol there. We all know the reality of the situation, that people will probably be bringing in their own, and there could be a lot of you know, instances where you know, those winding country roads can get the best of people if they've maybe had a little bit too good a time there. Also, an event like this that's advertised and put out on the internet, I would have concerns that they wouldn't be able to control how many people show up out there. And there could be, you know, more people show up than they can handle. I would have some concerns that maybe they don't have the management experience or expertise to carry off an event like this if there are troubles which can arise. You know, people get in fights and that sort of thing, and I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. And I'm confident that the people that own the property and the gentlemen that are trying to put on the event, that's certainly not their intent, and something I'm sure they want to avoid at all costs. But sometimes when you open something up to the public, you can't you know, be guaranteed who's going to show up and what's going to happen. Things can get out of your control, and that would be just the biggest concern of mine is maybe just this area not being able to handle an event like that, and maybe the organizers having good intentions but maybe not being able to handle it, and maybe things getting out of control. And it is a little bit out in the county and away from services. If there, you know, was a medical emergency or a situation where police had to come in, it might take them some time to get there. That was probably the biggest concerns I had, and again, I respect all my neighbors out there. We don't want to make any problems, and I don't want to quash anybody's fun, but I do have some concerns about the area not being able to handle the event, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Any questions? Jerry?
Just with all that being said, are you for it or against it?
I would say I would have to be against it. Again, I'm for neighbors being able to do what they want to do out in the country, but I think this situation where you'd be bringing in a lot of people that you know, aren't from that area, aren't of the neighborhood, they might not respect the other neighbors as much as the property owners do. And again, nothing against the property owners, but again, you may not be able to control all the people coming into the area.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Before I start, I want to make one thing clear. Anything that I say here tonight in front of this board is of my own personal opinion and does not represent my employer or other members of people that I work with on a daily basis. That being said, the items in reference to Section 702 of the Standards of General Applicability for the Rutherford County Zoning Resolution, I have some concerns with this project. Oh, also, I'm at 4900 Rucker Christiana Road, just under 501 feet from this property in question. I'm just outside the 500 feet notification. If it hadn't been for Danielle's nice sign, I probably would not have known about this event until everybody started showing up Friday afternoon. It's basically 3 houses to the north. I was not notified by anybody else about this application, including the applicants. This area is outside the urban growth boundary of Murfreesboro. As such, it is considered a very rural area, and an event of this type would have a negative impact on the people who choose to live in such a rural area. We like our quietness, we like our birds singing, our coyotes yipping, and our rabbits hopping across the field. Having the hours in the application not limited, and until they spoke this night, I was not aware that they were going to be shutting, well, it doesn't sound like they're going to be shutting things down at midnight, but all the electric instruments would be, amplified instruments would be shutting down at midnight. I don't know about you all, but I go to bed at 10 o'clock. I have a medical history that requires me to get a good night's sleep. And if I don't get a good night's sleep, I'm worthless the next day. If there are large, loud bands playing up past midnight, or even up to midnight, that's going to impact me and also my family in a negative manner, even just being 500 feet from this event. We are, when I say we, my wife and I are concerned about potential for consumption of both legal and illegal mind-altering substances. Granted, they're not going to be selling any alcohol here, but that's not going to prevent somebody from bringing in alcohol or other things and what goes along with that. There is a potential, along with these mind-altering substances, for people to want more of them, and concerned that they may look at nearby houses for ways to supply that consumption by either burglary or other methods. And there is also the violence that's associated with those types of uses. This use is not an operation that is typical in a rural setting, is more suited to like a concert venue or a much larger piece of property where there is some extensive buffering involved. The road is narrow here. It is just a small 2-lane country road, and as the other gentleman pointed out, is a windy road. There are lots of bicyclists that use this road because it is separate and runs parallel to 231 South. And there are even races like Tour de Cure that use this road as their standard route because it is less traveled and is a challenge to the bicyclists because it is windy. But there is concern that if there are bicyclists on it in the Saturday or Sunday, or even the Friday evening, that all this traffic is coming in, that there might be some danger to them. And if you look just to the, well, you can't really see it on this picture, but there is a retention pond just to the north of this property, and it drains to the underground water system in this area, and it would need to be protected from any undue impact from this event. I did not hear the organizers mention what they would do with the gray water from the mobile homes and RVs that would be coming in there. They did mention that there would be porta potties on site, but there was no mention of what would happen to that waste. So, you know, based on all these 6 items I have presented, I do not feel it meets the Section 702 Standards of General Applicability for your Rutherford County zoning ordinance, and as such would not be qualified as a conditional use permit in this case. And I stand opposed. Thank you very much.
Wait just a minute, maybe some questions.
Mr. Curtis, the other gentleman neighbor got up here, he'd said in the past that he had, and I don't know exactly how close he lives in proximity to this property, but he'd said in the past that he had heard them playing, you know, all night, stuff like that. From where you live in the past, have you ever heard them playing all night?
On occasion, yes. And not, you know, if it's just, I hear them playing occasionally. Right. It has not been in a offensive manner. It has just sounded like 3 or 4 instruments in a band playing with some people singing, and it has not been in any way, manner offensive. Because I don't have a problem with somebody doing that on their property. But when it's an organized event like this with 30-something bands coming in, I have a great concern.
I understand. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Thank you. Anyone else? Close the public hearing. We have a motion on it.
Mr. Chairman, we turned down Cripple Creek situation similar to this about a year ago, so I'm going to make a motion to deny this request.
I'll second it.
You have a reason?
The reason is this is a rural neighborhood, narrow roads, that I personally don't think the neighbors would appreciate the music till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. Bicyclists traveling the road, and when you got that kind of people coming, that amount of people, you're going to have alcohol.
Okay. You think this is not appropriate size?
I don't think it's appropriate for the area.
Okay, for the size of the property?
Yes, sir.
Never. Okay. We have a motion and we have a second. Call the roll, please.
Keith Bratcher.
If you vote yes, you're voting for his motion.
Yes.
Joe Crowell.
Yes.
Joe Machoto.
Yes.
Jerry Sartain.
Yes.
Dane Cantrell.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Was denied. The next item is a request by James Bradley. What do you have on that, please?
Thank you. Application 2012-48, filed by James Bradley, involves the property located at 14447 Manchester Pike. It's a 16-acre site located in the residential 15 zone. Ms. Bradley would like conditional use approval to hold special events on her property with variance relief from the development standard requiring paved parking. This application requests that she can hold weddings, receptions, company picnics, etc. She will not be serving or allow the consumption of alcohol on the site. She's proposing event hours to be no earlier than 9 a.m. or no later than 10 p.m. and the events will occur on the days Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. This is her site that is located off Manchester Pike, and the effect on neighbors is fairly limited. It's a large site. The areas around her are heavily wooded and not very populated, and she's got I-24 as a neighbor. So it's unlikely that noise will be a factor, or spillover from noise will be a factor affecting neighbors in this area. This is the residence that is on the property, that is the applicants. These are photos of the surrounding area as well as the site itself. We posted a sign on the property. And we are recommending approval with conditions. I have not received any phone calls on this particular application, and so we are finished with our presentation. This is her site plan that she submitted, and that concludes.
Do we have anyone here representing this request? Will you come around, please?
I'm sorry. We do plan to have maybe weddings or outdoor weddings or maybe family reunions, something to that effect. Wedding showers, baby showers. Those are the things we've had requests for at this location.
What hours?
Most of the time, they're in the afternoons, what we've had requests for, but we certainly, I don't see anything starting before 10 in the morning, and I'm thinking probably would be completed by 9, no later than 10 in the evening at the very latest.
Weddings, will there be any alcohol?
Absolutely not.
No alcohol? No. How many people?
I don't think we would ever have over 100 at the most. I just don't think that
you have 16 acres and you're located kind of to the rear of these 16 acres?
No, sir. We're located more toward the front
More towards the front. Okay.
I guess we're kind of in the middle. The little square is
I see
where
it now. In the middle of it, in the middle of the drawing. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. May be seated. We'll open this for a public hearing for anyone who'd like to speak on this request. Close the public hearing. Do we have a motion on it?
Approved, Mr.
Have a
Chairman.
motion that be approved. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Joe Machado. Call a roll, please.
Keith Bratcher.
Yes.
Joe Kroll,
Yes.
Joe Machado,
Yes.
Jerry Sartain,
Yes.
Thane Cantrell.
Yes.
Motion carries, sir.
It is approved. The next item we have is a request by James Jacobs, and this is a burrow pit, another burrow pit.
Thank you. Application 2012-49 filed by James Jacobs involves property owned by Charles Farah Partnership. The location of the property is John Bragg Highway. It's a 9.23 acre site and it's zoned residential 15. They're seeking temporary conditional use permit to allow a burrow pit with relief from the area requirements and setback requirements for burrow pits in the R15 zone. And it's their intention to bring the property to grade in order to make it marketable for the possible sale of the property in the future. This involves rock and not necessarily clay that we discussed in the prior application tonight. The applicant also is in receipt of a temporary conditional use permit and has actually obtained a renewal of that permit on the site across the street for the across John Bragg Highway, directly across. You can see some of the excavation work taking place. And we've never received any complaints regarding that, and it's the same type of work that's being conducted on that particular site that's being requested tonight. You have a plan that was submitted with the application, but of course, with these burrow pit applications, it also defers and references approval by the county engineer that's required after the BZA approval. I've not received any phone calls regarding this particular application. And these are photos of the surrounding area, and if you recognize some of the pictures, it's because this site was also the subject of an earlier application tonight for the haunted maze, or haunted woods. But as you can tell, that they've demonstrated being good neighbors. No one showed up at the renewal, so we don't anticipate problems with this as long as they abide by the conditions recommended by staff. And this is the plan that was submitted by the applicant. And that concludes our presentation.
I'm sorry, I missed. Was there a time limit on this?
There's always a time limit. It's automatically 6 months with a 3-month extension.
I want to hear you say it.
Yes, however, in the case of burrow pits, we have learned throughout going through this process several times recently that there is a gap. There's a time period that occurs between your approval and the date they can actually start. There's other things that have to happen. And so what we have been doing is rephrasing the expiration language to say the effective date is the date of issuance of a land disturbance permit, or in the case of the project earlier tonight, engineering recommended the date of issuance of a notice to proceed. So it just gives the applicant the actual 6 months to work with.
Okay, do we have someone here representing this request? Who'll come around, please?
My name is James Jacobs.
You have any other information about it? Any questions?
I just know, I guess a little bit of a question. Only difference between what you all are going to be doing on this site versus the one across the road, you're taking off dirt on here. On the other site, you're going to be doing rock here and lowering the bluff, correct?
Sir.
On this side here, you're gonna be taking off rock instead of dirt like on the other side?
It's rock on both
It's,
sides.
it is rock,
Yes, sir.
okay. So you're basically gonna be doing on this site what you're doing across the road? All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Maybe Joe?
You already finished the other side of the road?
No, sir.
Gonna start to have two going at once?
Sir?
You gonna have two sites at one time,
No, sir.
sir?
No, sir.
I thought you said you wasn't through the other side.
No, sir, I'm not.
Well, why, you're starting another one, is what I'm trying to say.
I'm gonna start that one when we finish the one on the other side, but it takes so long to go through
Oh,
all the
when
process. It's
when you
just
finish
easier.
the other side, you're gonna start this one?
Right. If I come up here now and get it done, and then it's 4 months from now before we finish, then I'll still have 2 months left on this permit, and then I can update it. And it takes so long for the process, it's just easier to.
You hadn't had any gripes on the other side of the road, have you?
Had any what?
You hadn't had any people gripe against what you're doing on the other side of the road, have you?
Or hadn't had any complaints whatsoever.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. You may be seated. We'll open this for a public hearing for anyone who'd like to speak on this request. Close the public hearing. Do we have a motion on it?
I'll make a motion be approved.
Have a motion to be approved. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Call the roll, please.
Keith Bratcher,
Yes.
Joe Crowell,
Yes.
Joe Machoto,
Yes.
Jerry Sartain, Zane Cantrell.
Yes.
Motion carries.
It is approved. The next item we have is a request by Stephen Percy, who is requesting a corn maze and relief in the parking.
Thank you. Application 2012-50 filed by Stephen Piercy involves the property located at 7721 Valley View Road. It's a 20-acre site that's zoned residential 15. Mr. Piercy is requesting temporary conditional use permit to allow a corn maze and variance relief from the development standard requiring paved parking for areas in the R15 zone. And this request is the exact same request that was approved in 2008 and 2011 filed by Stephen Piercy affecting this particular site. He is proposing the hours of operation, which you will see in the staff report, and the types of signage that's being proposed. We've not received any complaints in the past from his prior corn maze operations, and I received one call that was informational. They were not against the request. They were just asking what the sign was for. And these are photos of the surrounding area, the structure that's on the property, the approximate location of the corn maze and the parking area, and the aerial, and that concludes our presentation.
Do we have anyone here representing this? All you have to do is stand at this time. Okay. Do we have any questions of this lady, what she's doing? It's been operating for a couple of years. We'll open this for a public hearing for anyone who'd like to speak on it. Close the public hearing. Do we have a motion on it?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve.
Have a motion to be approved. Have a second. Jerry.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Keith Bratcher,
Yes.
Joe Crowell,
Yes.
Joe Machoto,
Yes.
Jerry Sartain,
Yes.
Zane Cantrell.
Yes.
Motion carried.
It is approved. Next item we have is a request by Stan Vaught, who is also requesting a corn maze and pumpkin patch and relief from the parking. What do you have on that, please?
Application 2012-51 filed by Stan Vaught involves the property located at 11,132 Las Casas Pike. It's a 179-acre plus or minus parcel located in a residential 15 zone. They are seeking temporary conditional use permit to establish a corn maze pumpkin patch with variance relief from the development standard requiring double bituminous parking areas in the R15 zone. And this application, actually, they've operated this corn maze at this location for several years. They received approval in 2008 from the Board of Zoning Appeals, which at that time granted a 2-year approval that's no longer done through this process. but he was operating in accordance with those approvals, and no complaints were ever received regarding the operation or the establishment of the corn maze or activities associated thereof. They are proposing the days and hours that you will see in the staff report, and I've not received any phone calls regarding this particular application. This is the site in question. It's a large farm tract. We posted a sign on the location. Photos of the surrounding area.
Stan, I see you're here. Do you have anything you wanted to add to this? Stan runs a real good operation out there. He's done that for a long, long time, and I enjoy, well, okay, I enjoy seeing that when I go by, so I know it's good operation. We'll open this for a public hearing for anyone who'd like to speak on this request. Close the public hearing. We have a motion on it.
Mr. Chairman, that's the only thing corn's good for this year. There's no ears on the stalks, so I'm going to make a motion to approve.
Okay.
I'll second it, but I didn't think any of it
Have a
got
second.
tall enough to have one this year.
Call the roll, please.
Keith Bratcher,
Yes.
Joe Crowell,
Yes.
Joe Machoto,
Yes.
Jerry Sartain,
Yes.
Zane Cantrell.
Yes.
Motion carries, sir.
Stan, I'm sorry you had to wait so long to hear all this. Okay. Do we have anything else? Try to bring us a better agenda next time. We are adjourned. Thank you so much, everybody, for your patience.